Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show, Serving Nerve, where we talk about whatever we want. And I'm already staring at this video going, oh my god, what are we getting into? But I think based on the image itself, you can expect what we're getting into. And it's more body positivity, fat acceptance, cringe compilations. And yeah, let's just dive right into this. Dive right into this pile of whipped cream right here. This is, like, so weird and fetishy, I hate it. But also, I just have to ask, do any of you guys actually like putting the whipped cream in your mouth? Because I prefer putting it on, like, a massive slice of pie or anything else. I feel like there's just so much better things you can do with any whipped products. Like, personally, I like the coconut whip that I buy, and when I use that, I'll just put it on top of, like, desserts and pies and stuff like that, or fruit or whatever. And I feel like it's quite light and pleasant, but the idea of just putting a bunch of that in my mouth just sounds lame-o-kablamo, dude. This is so weird. Like, I just don't understand what people are doing with their lives. What are we doing? What are we doing as a society? Like, what are we doing? Like, you, me, her, all of us. Is this literally what we're doing with our lives? I'm literally, like, shaking with the amount of distaste that I have for the overall, whatever isms this is. Bruh, it looks like she's gonna put it right up her freaking nose, my dude. That is psychotic. You think you can hurt my feelings? Probably. I feel like anybody on TikTok you can hurt the feelings of really easily. I'm a fat girl living in today's society. God, they act so oppressed. Like, you know, dude, there's anything else that you experience in life is probably worse than being fat. At this point, I'm inclined to believe it. You know, if you're living in the Western world, the amount of horrible experiences that you actually don't have throughout your life are so significant that if you're number one, like, oh, you think you can hurt me? I'm fat. I've been bullied my whole life for being fat. And I'm sorry I go off about the Western world and whatnot, but it's just such a privileged perspective to have in many capacities if, like, this is the limitation of your life. Like, it's like people hurt your feelings and you can't have your feelings hurt because you've been fat and you've dealt with the oppression that you face as a fat person. I just feel like it's so ridiculous when there are countries that don't have clean drinking water, food access, when human trafficking is rife, and, you know, where human trafficking is a thing that we all can experience at any point in our lives in any country, and child abuse is a thing, and, you know, assaults are common, and all these things. If what you can experience and the limitation of what you feel people can hurt you with is just like, you know, you've been bullied for being fat, basically, which isn't good. I'm not trying to say it's good, but it's just like, it's like, dude, like, the perspective is just so ridiculous. I feel like there are so many more horrible things you can experience in life than the judgments of other people. Like, horrible, horrible experiences in life. And many of you people have experienced horrible things in life. And it's not to belittle this individual based on their perspective, because maybe they've dealt with other things. But it's just like to add so much power to bullying and to be like, oh, you can't hurt me. I've faced the worst because I've been bullied for my body weight or I've lived in a society as a fat person. It's just so ridiculous. It's so, like, inflated. You know, it's delusional. It's literally delusional to think this way. And I know it's just my opinion, but I feel like, man, I would rather be bullied my entire life for being fat and be fat than face half of the things I've faced in my life. And I haven't even faced that many horrible things. Like, I'm a very lucky ducky, so I can't imagine what other people experience. And then those other people with even worse experiences see somebody complaining on TikTok about their problems, one just being that they're fat, and it's like, bro, I don't know, man. Like, it just kind of blows my mind at how, like, delusional it is. But saying that, it's just my opinion, so it doesn't matter.
Here's your reminder that fat phobia is rooted in racism. As always, if you haven't read this book, go do that.
Yes, we have to go through the videos that people have been telling me to watch about this. Unfortunately, I've yet to, but let's hear this dame out.
The main thing to understand is that for the last 300-ish years, white folks have been marketing fatness as a black trait, and this is regardless of whether or not black people individually were actually fat. that was irrelevant. The message they spread was that black women specifically were ravenous and uncontrollable, and these barbaric traits made them fat. On the flip side, thinness was marketed as a white trait. Again, regardless of whether or not individual white people were actually thin, that was irrelevant. The idea was that white women specifically were refined and restrained, and this led them...
Oh, I completely understand the entire argument that they say it's rooted in racism now. So it's basically the thin ideal of today is based on the racist perceptions of history in the past. Can't you just debunk this by looking at, like, other eras of history where fatter, more voluptuous bodies were more desirable? Like, if you go back in time, you can see throughout history, depending on, like, famine, and depending on certain circumstances based on countries, famines, all kinds of things, bigger, more voluptuous bodies were actually considered more desirable. Fatter bodies were considered more desirable because they were more able to, bear children, they wouldn't starve as easily, it promoted that you had clean access to food and or water, you were surviving, you were doing more than surviving, you were thriving, and you have an excess of food. So doesn't it just debunk it right there? Like, this is just a societal change of beauty over the course of history, and right now we're in an era where not even being size 0 is, like, popular anymore. It used to be, like, I think in the 2010s, it was more like size 0. Nowadays, like, 2020s, it seems like more like people are really into having massive boobahs, big booties, really tight and toned waists, and or also being like really like muscular and stuff as well, depending on what industries you're kind of adhering to. But it's more like body augmentation, BBLs, having very distorted physical perceptions of the body, the severe hourglass, basically, and or having like a really particular form, but also having a tiny waist is what's considered desirable nowadays, based on like the current industry standards. It changes all the time. And also if you go to like the Victorian era, more voluptuous women were more desirable. I just feel like it just changes with the times. Based on the times, now that everybody in a lot of countries that have access to consistent food supplies and drinking water, they now look at thinness like it's more ideal because your exposure to food perpetuates that, if you're over-consuming, you're gluttonous. It does involve gluttony. It's not on the basis of even race. It's on the basis of, like, societal access to things. So when food was more scarce and it was more for, like, the rich to have a lot of food, having a bigger body also implied that you were rich. I think it's more like that. I'd like to look into this a little bit more. I get the idea of this, but I just don't think it goes well with the courses of bodies throughout history, because this is a small snapshot in our history based on food access. So it just doesn't make that much sense. I think that it's more on the basis of food access for countries and the connotations that those countries' beauty industries and beauty standards have with the food access they have. Because if you go into other countries, having a more curvaceous or a fatter body is considered more desirable than a skinny body because it also still shows that you have access to food. So I think it has something to do more with that than with like race and the connotations that come with race, but that's just my own opinion.
To having delicate, thin bodies. Over the years, these messages have become more subtle, but even today, they're still very prevalent in conversations around race, health, capitalism, and poverty.
See, I just don't really believe that, because I think it has to do more with like poverty than anything else. Especially nowadays, where the associations are more with like, oh, McDonald's and all these like fast foods and stuff. They're not really that cheap anymore, but the idea is you have access as a thin person usually to like, the like stereotypical like Whole Foods, like, the Air One, like you can get your like collagen or whatever, and you can eat all these like really healthy dainty foods, and you can be an LA mom, and you can be like size 0 and all this stuff, and you're super rich, and you shop at all these places, versus you're an average body weight or you're overweight and you go to McDonald's or something and you shop at Walmart for your groceries and whatever. I think that's more the connotation nowadays. It's always been to do with money and wealth and body weights, and the associations they have with poverty and or wealth historically have had much more to do with people's perceptions of, what is considered societally beautiful. But nowadays with science, we also can understand the health ramifications of being severely overweight. So I just really don't believe in this. I think it's a little bit delusional, and maybe that's my own opinion, but I just really have to disagree. Like, I think it has very little to do with race nowadays, and it has much more to do with wealth, as it has consistently had stuff to do with wealth throughout history. And pardon if that comes off as ignorant or discriminant in any capacity, but I don't think it has much to do with race at all. I think it has to do with wealth. But that's my personal opinion. I think it has much more to do with wealth than anything else. It's always had to do with wealth and food access.
In conversations around race, health, capitalism, and poverty.
I'm just gonna cut it off here. Tell me what you guys think about the blue-haired chick and, like, all her weird ramblings, and we'll definitely still go through, or maybe we'll go through the whole, like, you know, obesity or body fat or being fat and racism stuff. We'll go through that at some point. I really don't, like, believe in, like, endeavoring to be racist or racially discriminate to people, but I think these are two very different things when we're looking at body weights, mainly just body weights. Now we have more education on health, what encapsulates health, the diseases and unhealthy lifestyles that can come with certain body weights. I think that it's much more important to focus on those things and also understand that historically, like, we've had some seriously, like, suboptimal perceptions of bodies, but it's also gotten to do with what we perceived at the time as more healthy and more, you know, wealth-oriented. So tell me what you think in the comments below, my people. I would love to hear your perspectives on the matter, and yeah, that was about it. So I hope you all enjoyed, and tell me what you think in the comments below. It has been lovely. Slater.